coming to you alive. We are Divergence. Thank you very much, everyone, for being patient with us. As we put up a post on our Facebook, we were looking for questions that you guys would be interested in asking Darren, and we were flooded with many of them. So thanks, everybody, for doing that. What we're going to do is we will be also doing a update on a huge success that we had at court yesterday. So Darren, I'll let you touch on that very briefly because we'll do another video on it.
Sure. Okay. So yesterday's court attendance by myself, Jody, Tamara, and Kim yielded some very interesting results. This is pretty much the first time we were able to walk into a courthouse without masks on, instructed by the sheriffs to put our masks on, whereby we presented him with our little piece of paper that says why we don't have to. And it had nothing to do with a medical exemption. It was actually pretty cool. And after he read about the first, I'd say 3 sentences of it, he said, okay, well, I'll have to go check with my manager regarding this. So he came back in about 30 or 45 seconds and he says, yeah, okay, no problem. You guys come on in. And then when we went into the little cubicle area there to start dealing with the court process, the lead inspector for the sheriffs actually came over and said that she was going to maintain a kind of a private room for us where they were actually going to hold the line for people publicly coming into the court desk area where you file your paperwork. The sheriffs actually had held the public out in the hallway, and they closed the door, and like the sheriff wasn't letting anybody else in. So that was a pretty spectacular moment for us. They didn't dispute our claims at all. They were very receptive, very intrigued, suggesting that they had never heard of this type of stuff before. But, it doesn't take long when you're quoting some of their own legislation and then they go into the background and they look up what some of the potential occurrences can be from using their legislation. It didn't take long for them to realize, okay, yeah, these guys, although they're not with a lawyer, their substance in their paperwork seems to be, have enough merit, cause, and effect to warrant the court to actually, for the first time now here, issue court process from the chancery listing. The chancery is the equity side of the court. This is the court that, Dean and I and a handful of others, we've been chasing for, let's just say the better part of 10 or 12 years. And the closest we ever got to a chancery listing was the court clerk actually saying chancery doesn't exist. What are you talking about? So that was essentially the farthest we've ever gotten until yesterday. So yesterday we rolled in, provided a little bit of paperwork with respect to what we did at Lion Titles. Though that specific filing, when we presented it to the clerk, she took a moment to view it, and then the demeanor completely started to be favorable. They weren't, so to speak, second guessing or dismissing our efforts. They were more than helpful, more than adequate. And again, the girls at the desk there yesterday were very professional, and to the point where maybe they're just used to people like us in the past where, our prior influences would have been, we come in with salt and abrasiveness. And we're, it didn't take long for us to learn that that's not, truly the best way to operate in any, whether it's business or social conditions or whatever the fact is. So yeah, yesterday was a very positive outcome. We had 2 filings done simultaneously between Jody and Tamara here, again, with the clean hands. So what we're suggesting here is that because these 2 don't have their possession of their birth certificates, they were actually able to have court filings filed without being in possession of the surname on the paperwork. Now that's the cool component, because we're using the birth name or the Christian name plus a middle name if you have one. And then we were abandoning the surnames altogether, and we were merely inserting a title there instead of the surname. And the court staff yesterday, they didn't say boo about any of this stuff. They just went and said, well, I'll have to go check with my manager on this. I'll be right back. But again, having the clean hands, and that evidenced by the sheriff, who's the inspector of the sheriff, who's standing right beside the clerk saying, yes, I have those birth certificates in my vault. So
she knew who we were.
So if you're in possession of it, then I'm not. And if you have the possession, that means these ones have the control. And again, there was a really interesting energy that was floating around within our little environment there yesterday. Nothing but positivity, no negative anything. As a matter of fact, it was almost surreal because again, like from mine and Dean's and our other friends, colleagues, past experiences with trying to land an equitable interest at the public desk of the courthouse while not wearing a mask. This is like the CERN generator firing up for the first time. It was kind of it was a pretty big deal. And again, they were blown away with, we've never seen this before, but we can tell by just the they can tell by the special wording that we're using in the paperwork that it's actually coinciding with what their legislation says. And they were basically put into a position where they could not deny the applicant's adverse claims. And when I say that the claims were short, when we eventually post here, probably strictly on the Divergence platform website, we'll talk about it here and we'll post this on Facebook and we'll let everybody, get tickled by this and put a smile on their face and whatnot. But I think we're going to start at some point here. We're going to start slowly pushing our efforts and our momentums towards our Divergence platform versus letting all this stuff go on Facebook. Because again, the powers that were. So here's the new management is in town. And again, when the hardcore people who understand what a chancery listing actually means, or a hearing sitting in equity, this is a unicorn showing up, and it was done with a lot of style and a lot of grace and a bunch of laughing. And it was not the typical court experience, which again is I would suggest would be typical of what you would expect. I know we have another friend here going through the court process today, and I heard back from him earlier suggesting that it was a bit of a wild ride, but he had some interesting things happen today as well. So we will touch base with him here and we'll do another update on that shortly. And as a matter of fact, we'll probably do another Zoom or two with him and he can, tell his stories and whatnot. But again, showing up with clean hands and not being in possession of that legal character, that's the game-changing component here that we've been looking for so long. We thought we had to maintain possession of that thing, but just kind of deny being the person, but yet you have it in your hand. So it's like, we ran into a lot of early successes with that, but then when they all started to turn to failures, we kind of started to have to look to other venues and other cupboards for the answer hiding behind the cookie jar. And yeah, yesterday was a fantastic experience, and they're actually excited to see where this goes. It almost felt like we were one team, like the clerks and the sheriff and everyone involved. It was. I was expecting a positive result, but I was actually still pretty surprised at the way that all unfolded. And it was pretty magical. If you
to watch Darren's eyes go off as the stamp went on the paperwork, he was like, I've been waiting for that sound.
Yeah, that was a fantastic sound. Again, when you're coming as the plaintiff, going to court is a whole different ball game versus being the defendant and trying to save your ass from purgatory or going to the can for X amount of years. Totally different. And again, when they sense your level of competency and your level of confidence, and you should have seen the sheriff stand down yesterday when I handed him well, here's our notice that I sent to your superior this morning, suggesting that we're all legally disabled. We're all private individuals with perfected security interests. And he was just deer in the headlights. He's like, oh, can you repeat that? And so we did, as I'm handing it to him. It was just one piece of paper. It's pretty simple. As a matter of fact, I think we'll probably even post that little piece of paper. Technical, of course, because I don't think I really know how to do anything otherwise.
And we are getting a little bit longer on this than we were hoping. So we will do a full interview on that, and maybe we'll join forces with the Australian boys, because that's actually who Darren was pertaining to there. So I think it'd be great for us to come together, because we were pretty much in court the same day. Yes. So we'll be able to share our successes and our failures together. So stay tuned for that for sure. Now, a lot of people already are asking for documents right away. Please understand there's some that we can show you guys, and it's when we're actually in the stage of this, there's going to be some we just can't until we hear a result. It's not that we're holding back information. We just have to take care of the process first of all, so that we can lead you guys through. Yeah, again, we would rather at this point of the game make sure that our process is tight and that it's going to be effective, and that we're not going to be wasting people's time. And it actually feels like, we've been, I don't want to say wasting time, but it feels like we've all been in like neutral gear for, let's just say the better part of 5 years. And yeah, it's time to switch that up and hit the gas, and we're going to do some stuff. So yeah. So you guys asked some questions. So here is Darren. He's showing up. I did not even prep him on any of these questions. So he doesn't even know what he's being asked. So this is where you're just going to be able to see the talent of this man and how he can just channel this beautifully and be able to get you guys some clarity on a lot of questions that you guys had. So, and a lot of the questions were very different. So we had some newbie questions and we had some very advanced questions.
Sure.
So we had a newbie question come in from Craig, and he said, as a newbie, I would love to know some of the basic benefits of following the divergence protocols so that police can't fine you for traffic tickets. You know, you can opt out of mandatory vaccinations, stop paying income tax, these kinds of things. So where can they start to educate themselves in these protocols to help them kind of catch up and understand this more?
Yeah. Okay. Well, short of going back and looking through all of our posts over the last, say, 6 months or whatnot, yeah, definitely just stay tuned to everything that we're doing, because as this thing is sharpening up and getting fine tuned, again, like I was just mentioning, when you see that court file process that we filed yesterday, oh my God, it was so short, to the point where I was even kind of surprised at how effective it was. So the basic general understandings and what can be expected to come down the pipe. Well, as soon as you perfect that interest by admitting your signature to that document and getting the ball rolling, attaching the consideration, that is primary. If you choose to remain in possession of that certificate just for a little while, hey, that's okay. While you fine tune your game and you come to a greater understanding and you come into greater wisdom as to what to do with this thing. That's, you could almost look at that as step 2. But the step 1, as soon as you sign that thing, and as soon as you add the consideration to it, you're what you might consider to be safe. Being safe is a lot better than being not safe. So get that thing now into the possession of the court so that the judge actually has the original documents. And I know we may have had a little bit of miscommunication there with respects to this in the past. We definitely want to be sending the originals into court. Don't send copies. The idea here is you keep a copy if you have to, but send the originals, because the judges, the magistrates, the registrars, they need to have the originals in their hands. Okay, so a judge has this original stuff in his hand. What does that do for you initially, right away? Well, it means that you're no longer liable for that name. And by you no longer being liable for that name, you are in an entirely different class of persons. I don't like to use that word, but it's just, we all know what that one means. So you're on a whole different level now, because you can prove an event happened. Once you can prove that event happened, that's the game changer. Again, we walked into the courthouse yesterday with no mask. We're looking at a sea of masks. Everybody's wearing masks, and everyone's looking at us going like, what's up with you guys? And there's four of us just do. So you're saying, like, what are some of the immediate benefits you might receive? Well, there's one. You don't have to wear a mask anymore if you don't want to. But again, you're not going to be getting pulled over for speeding tickets. I'm not condoning going out and doing 255 miles an hour down down your local highway. No, that's not what being responsible and liable for yourself is all about. However, awesome stuff coming down the pipe as soon as you do it. And then stay tuned, and we will take you through the rest of the process.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have 2 questions now from Josh, actually from Australia. And his first question is, I have 2 friends who want to get their children back, one from the state and one from their ex-partner. They both have been handed a short straw. Would our remedy process differ where we are attaching value to a different trust like offspring?
Okay, let's see here. Well, the process is going to stay the same regardless. I mean, the corporate entity itself, whether it was this or that or the other, or this time, that time, or the next time, it doesn't matter when the event happens. The fact is that when it happened, it had that registration number attached to it. This is what we're instantly perfecting. So that process is pretty much the same for everybody around the globe, except, saving a handful of countries. But that's how, whether you're a newborn or you're an old gentleman or lady, it doesn't matter. As soon as you perfect that interest, the game changes. As soon as you perfect it, that's the most critical component of what we're doing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Now, his second question, not quite related, but can we use any minted silver coin? And is there any possible dramas with using their minted coin?
You know what? I guess we're just trying to streamline the process here for them. Could you take an unstamped, unmarked silver ingot and attach it to your paperwork? Yeah, absolutely. From everything that we've been told, they actually describe it as lawful silver coin. It doesn't technically say 1 ounce, but because the 1 ounce just seems to be a standard issue, it's just as easy to go do that. And again, if you didn't have access to a 1 ounce Troy coin, if you only had a 50-cent piece or whatever, it's the silver is the content. It's because silver is intrinsic. It came from the earth. It's not man-made. It's not based in paper and in people's minds. That's the fundamental difference between the silver and legal tender. The silver is actually way more tangible and negotiable really at the end of the day, because debt instruments will only get you so far, whereas silver exchanges and negotiations are much more capable than debt instruments. So,
and can you touch on like why the silver, not gold or any other precious metal?
you know what I mean, really at the end of the day, you could probably attach a rock to your paperwork because it's something of material wealth. Some people find rocks very valuable. You know, could you attach gold? Absolutely. If you have the means to do that, sure. I think I've touched on this briefly on another chat we had about the sanctuary shekel back in the day, like Christ times. I did a little bit of converting on all that really quickly, and the scriptures actually refer to shekels as in plural. So I did the value, the current value back then on 2 shekels versus what it would equate out to today. And when I did this conversion about 3 years ago, it worked out to about $1,500 in today's currency rates. And that was almost the actual value of a 1 gold coin. So it was interesting how that all lines up. But again, to effectually pass a title legally, all you need is silver. Could you use copper? I'm going to say it's better than nothing. But yeah, if you can squeak out $30 or so for silver coin, and if you're having problems with that, I'm seeing all kinds of people online now because of the stir that we're creating with this whole silver coin stuff. People are coming forward and saying, oh, I have a bunch. Please message me or PM me or down message me, or I don't even know what DM means. But anyway, direct message. Okay, gotcha. So you're going to direct message these people, and they will actually hook you up and help you get your hands on some of these coins. So there's, again, this thing is just unraveling, and it's picking up a lot of speed, a lot of momentum, and yeah, so far so good. So, and
bottom line, if you are hard pressed to get a silver coin, please contact us here at Divergence, and we will do our best to get one to you or find a way for you to get in contact with one. Okay.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay, so now we have a lot of questions around this. So I'm just going to kind of summarize a whole bunch of this lady's questions. Lorelei, thank you for sending actually quite a few. People get a little bit confused as far as, okay, so now we're a private citizen, we're out of the system. How does it work now with, you know, for instance, your vehicle, your driver's license, you know, if you get in an accident, these kind of things, your mortgages, your loans. So how does this affect, like, how do you now fit into society once you've removed yourself this way?
As a matter, okay, so in the way that Lorelei has this very first thing worded here, where she says, in perfecting the interest, how does one maintain the ability to drive? Think of the complete opposite. You didn't have the ability to drive before, but equity and perfecting your interest is providing you the actual ability. Before, it was just a privilege. It wasn't an ability. It could have been taken away from you at any time. So you actually weren't able to drive whenever you wanted. You were only able to drive when they let you. So once you perfect your stuff, you now are outside of their scope of power, and they can't say to you, hey, you just went through a stop sign. But your answer to that is, yeah, well, but I didn't harm anybody, and I'm serving the creator, and my schedule is important. I didn't have time to stop. So all the public stuff no longer applies. So again, I'm not condoning that people go and start running stop signs, but what I am suggesting is, hey, if you're out there in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, and you come to an intersection, you take the quick look around. If there's no cars, I'm suggesting if you're serving the Lord doesn't require you to stop for stop signs. When you have perfected interest, the legal stuff melts away, as long as you can justify it. Yeah, I didn't stop at that stop sign because I got better things to do. I'm in a hurry. But thank you. I need you to escort me to the next detachment's jurisdiction so that they may now also provide a security detail and follow me around to my next point of interest. Again, this is where they're going to start to act into their protect mode versus their I'm coming after you mode. So when you're suggesting here, should we continue to obtain the regular government issued ID stuff? Well, you know what? All that secondary application to get all those identifications come as a result of the birth certificate, correct? You need the birth certificate to get all those other IDs. So when you perfect the birth certificate, what probably happens? Well, all these other instruments are also perfected. That instantly happens in the background. Someone back there flips the switch and says, yeah, you're good to go. You're different. You're special. And you've proved it. You've landed some interest. You've provided security so that the system doesn't have to come to you to collect if there's a problem. They can go to the security and take the value needed out of the security to cover any debts, harms, costs, fees, services, any of that kind of stuff.
And that goes right into our next question as far as loans and mortgages and these kind of things. If that was, you know, set up under the fictional character and now that's no longer you, is that now who pays that off, and is that still your property?
Sure. The property has technically always been in that all caps name anyway. The only difference here is that you're no longer volunteering to be liable for it. You're transferring that liability to another party. So technically not a lot actually happens here other than the fact that, hey, I'm not paying for this, they are. Why? Because it's their name. And I quit claiming. That's actually part of the land titles processes where, Your Honor, I quit claiming to be liable for that entity for those purposes of serving sin and having another God before the true one. When this all comes back to the clean hands stuff, once you can prove you have clean hands, it's a different world. They can no longer attach liability to you. So mortgages, loans, all those notes that are out there floating around in the background, we agreed to those contracts and we endorsed them with naked signatures, no substance, no real agreement in the process that benefits us. No, we completely left ourselves vulnerable and naked to attack. And again, this is what the banks swoop in and they do. The banks don't lend you their money. No, they actually convert the monetary value of the instrument that you just agreed to. Why? Because two signatures create money because you have agreement of parties. Once you have the agreement of the parties, that's your mortgage. And now you just agreed to pay yourself back for your money that you borrowed from yourself. Why? Because you had to through a bank because you didn't know how to access your own securities account to fund your house for you as a principal trust residence. That's where the trust lives, right here. And look, it's in the all caps name still. Yes, that actually doesn't change. The Her Majesty, the Queen, the Crown, in right of globally owns the house. You just get to show up and use it. Again,
so does that mean they don't own it?
That means they own it. They're entitled to all the profits, proceeds, rents, interest, accruals. They get to play with all the money. We just show up with the key to the house. We get to have use of the fridge in that house. We get to go have the bath in that house, sitting in on the deck, enjoying the lake view, wherever that property is defined, however you define the property, whether it's a boat, a house, a plane, anything, any property that's identifiable, you can literally wrap in this new system, this new process where the secured party is the one who actually bears the burden of payment.
Thank you. Great answer. So, as the beneficiary of the trust, do we have access to funds for humanitarian and personal purposes? And if so, how is it accessed?
Well, as the beneficiary, do you have access? Absolutely. The settlor created all the conditions for you to have access to all those funds. Should they be for humanitarian and or personal purposes? That probably covers everything. Other than humanitarian and personal, there's probably not a lot of gray area in between those. That actually literally covers everything. So yes, the humanitarian efforts, you're actually touching and concerning the charitable nature, the charitable scope of what we're always supposed to have been doing. But no, the system oppressed us and crushed us into a mold where we didn't have a lot of surplus income or surplus funds to go do all these fantastic works of charity that we have kind of felt the innate desire to always do. But when I can barely pay my bills and I can't make my car payments and I've only got a fridge full of condiments, how am I supposed to go out and greatly affect my neighbor's life charitably other than, me physically going and cutting his grass for him? I can't really do anything for him monetarily. I would love to, but I just don't have the means to do it. So that's why landing our interests, getting that trust set up puts you into a position to have access through Treasury to all that accumulated wealth that the system has been harvesting for the better part of since Babylon. And again, there's a lot of material wealth back there, and it's just sitting there waiting for you or others to show up with the ability to access it so that you can go do all these incredible acts of charity. And again, it takes a man or woman with a special heart, the type of person who's above being susceptible or being vulnerable to the lure of money. Someone could literally, roll up here right now and drop $1 million off in my lap and say, hey, take this and come back to the system with us. And, my answer would be absolutely not. As soon as you accept that I don't want to call it that offer, if you want to call it taking the bite of the apple, if you want to be gods in the birth certificate realm, in the, the fiction world, then, go ahead. However, that's not what we were intended to do, but we were intended to go lead this loving, nurturing style of life where we're doing nothing but being charitable and humanitarian purposes. So yes, the beneficiary absolutely has control and the means to disperse or distribute funds as he or she sees fit to help everybody and everything. That's the entire point of what we're doing. Yes.
I was just about to say that. It's the whole reason we're making this public and teaching you guys how to do this so that you guys can be freed of all of that weight. And actually, Darren and I were just talking about that today. We can't even imagine what the earth and the energy and people will do when they can take a sigh of relief, knowing that they just don't have to struggle anymore. They don't have to fight in that, survival mode. It would, just to be able to sleep well.
Yeah. Well, and again, right, you got the public system teaching us to compete with our neighbor instead of loving our neighbor. Well, when you're constantly just trying to compete and do better than your neighbor, you were actually fundamentally missing the point, because you and your neighbor working together is still much more capable of us working as individuals or as singular units. Well, that's why we're all coming together now, waking up through this great consciousness, this great awareness right now. Again, this stuff is all prophesized, and this shouldn't really be a big surprise to people. It's all been kind of, told to us more than once.
And that's our wish and our dream, that once you guys are freed of this, that you can use this money and this new way of living to be able to pay it forward to other people. That's the reason we're doing all of this by donation. We want to be able to make sure that we help you guys, and then you guys go and help other people as well. Yeah, that's absolutely the whole point of this. So, okay. So we had some questions around the passport that I was talking about. Now, from some people's understanding, the white passport is a temporary passport.
Yeah, we have kind of firsthand direct knowledge from colleagues of ours in the United States who have effectively done something very similar to what we're showing people here, different in small regards, but not substantially. It's pretty much the same process. And they have actually had possession of these white passports that are not of the temporary variety. They are the legit permanent ones. So it came back to me as their white passports. So that's just kind of what I'm conveying as, yes, they are still white passports, but just, again, substantially, they're going to be bona fide. They're not just going to be temporary. They're going to be like the legit real ones. I'm thinking they're probably just not going to publicly post pictures of, hey, special private permanent passports, because that just causes a lot of stir publicly, and it causes a lot of controversy and a lot of shit that
a lot of questions
that the public isn't really entitled to go apply for anyway, which is why, again, when Dean went and applied for his special passport, he got entirely through the process, which was simple. It was effective. It wasn't, it wasn't a beast of a thing to get through. But again, at the end of it, they asked to see his proof of his security entitlements. And that's the part that we did not have. Hence, we were not issued special passports. However, through what we have come to understand and appreciate now, just that simple little land titles filing output is definitely enough to get your passport application started. And Jody here, for example, has sent this in, and I think they say on the website that it may take up to like 15 days to get back to us. And we're not even in that 15-day bracket yet. Like, we're getting close. However, there was another blurb there that said, or we could get back to you in a couple of days. But I think given the significance of what's truly going on here, they're probably not going to be able to make the decision in 2 days unless you have something go through the court systems where you have a court order suggesting, yes, this one is absolutely entitled to the entitlement of a white passport. Why? Because she brought an adverse claim before the court. She submitted proper documents. She submitted a proper affidavit. And we all know, people that have been doing this stuff for a while, an unrebutted affidavit stands as commercial fact. It cannot be rebutted once it's laid out and the appropriate time frame for a rebuttal has passed. It's locked. No one can now come along and bump that out of the way, which is part and parcel to why this individual would be entitled to a white passport. It's just a little bit of a process. So either land titles or vital statistics or one of these types of entities are going to spit out a certificate, an actual certificate. And once you have that certificate of indefeasible title, that's what the passport people are actually looking for. So we kind of preemptively got the process started without having the certificate, but we have the document in our possession now that says, yeah, but the certificate is coming. So we just kind of, I'm not suggesting we jump the gun a little bit, but
maybe the cart before the horse a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit,
but we wanted to see what they were going to say. Again, come back.
Yeah, we're here to push. I'm not here to just sit back and watch the birds and the bees all day. No, we're here to shake stuff up.
And one thing we've learned about the government is usually no news is good news.
Yeah. So. And again, Chief, one of the justices of the Supreme Court of the United States came forward with that. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he's the one that came forward and said that silence is in keeping with the doctrines of equity running. And by running, I mean like they're online, they're working. So when you don't hear back from them, most of the time you can assume that, hey, they would let you know if they have a problem. And if they're not letting you know, then they're kind of giving you free rein or a little bit of rope to go to the next step. They're allowing you to proceed, if that kind of makes sense, versus, no, we don't like your stuff, take it back. And again, for example, the court case that we went into for yesterday to get our stuff filed, we actually electronically filed the same stuff on Friday, 3 days earlier, but it was rejected for a couple of silly little reasons, like pay the $200 fee, which I can understand them rejecting it for that reason. They also suggested, hey, send it to the Supreme Court of British Columbia. Don't bring it to the provincial level. So we're like, okay, check that box. And then it said, hey, if you want to send us affidavits now, but you don't have to, but if you want to, make sure they're notarized. And we were just like, well, okay, we can cure that deficiency. So those are pretty much the only reasons why they're saying, hey, your stuff was rejected. So in my mind, that's not a rejection. It's just telling you, hey, tighten up your game a little bit and then try again. And again, like we were just mentioning, we tried it again yesterday, and yeah, it was 100% successful. So
excellent. Okay, so Lorelei's next question is, okay, she knows of somebody who is in her family that has accrued several speeding tickets and violations. So he goes and perfects his interest. Does all of that just disappear? He doesn't have to pay for any of those consequences whatsoever?
Yeah, again, we're not condoning bad behavior, but yes, it's automatically wiped out. I have two other examples of friends of ours that took a single communication to the Attorney General that was just alluding to the fact and alleging the fact that, hey, I've done this to my birth certificate, I've done this to my birth certificate, and I've delivered it to the sheriff for these purposes. And that was enough so that this individual, about 3 weeks later-ish, he got a letter back from the Department of Motor Vehicles saying, hey, your driver's abstract has been cleared. So he contacts me and says, hey, Darren, what does that mean? And I was like, I'm the one that didn't graduate high school. You should know what that means. It means your abstract is either cleared or it's sealed. When it's sealed from the public, that means that the public actually can't go online and go look into your behavior, or they won't be able to see the speeding ticket from 18 years ago. So yeah, this friend of ours, he had a list of, infractions. I was with him when he got some of these speeding tickets. So I know for a fact he had a driver's abstract full of, bad stuff. And then he has this, and this letter comes again. This letter came unsolicited. It's not like he contacted the Department of Motor Vehicles and says, hey, no, they sent it to him automatically. So it was a little bit out of the blue. It was pretty cool. And so is he liable for all that stuff? Now I'm going to suggest you're borderline going to say, like, no, you're not. So again, don't go out there running stop signs. And, if there is a cat on the sidewalk, you're not supposed to go up there and try to hit the cat. No, we're supposed to be more conscientious of our to do no harm, right? Like, we're not going to go out there and do bad stuff. So we got to keep that all dialed in, because we get that all the time. And that, people come back to us, oh, so you're saying that we can go rob banks? Like, no, you are a bank. Why would you go rob yourself?
It makes no sense. And that's the whole point. Equity is supposed to make you better as a person. It's supposed to raise your vibration. And, this is what we're kind of hoping is that, you got a clean slate, you're starting fresh again. So, better, do better. Yeah. That's our philosophy.
Yeah. So I hope that answered that question. Yeah. Once you perfect your interest, things like the driver's license instantly get switched in the background, and you will receive some kind of a notification, or something will come down the pipe where it kind of gives you a hint. Hey, stuff's moving and shaking in the background. And again, equity aids the vigilant, not those who slumber on their rights, which means, hey, just because you perfected the interest, don't stay in possession of it. Get it sent to the courthouse, and then go and make an appointment with the judge as the plaintiff, saying, hey, Your Honor, I only came into all this crazy knowledge like a month ago. I don't technically understand all this stuff, but I do understand, and I do know enough that I was supposed to do this and this and this. And now I'm led to believe that the court of equity and a court of conscience is actually going to come to my aid and assistance. Is that correct, Your Honor? Mm-hmm. And I know what his answer is going to be, and it's not no. So there you go. Continuing.
Okay. When signing any documents moving forward as your new identity, are you using your thumbprint, or are you writing your new name and titled as protected purchaser?
I would always write the new name with the title, protected purchaser. Again, that's the entry level title.
It's like your new last name.
Yeah, basically use that instead of your surname. And again, you call us crazy, but we just had our documents approved at the British Columbia Supreme Court, and there wasn't a last name in our paperwork, only titles, which tells you they will take it. And if the court takes it, that also is evidence of the fact that we are on the right trail. So do we also always need to add a thumbprint? It depends on what you're signing. If you're signing an incredibly valuable land deal and you're moving and shaking big stuff, I'd say throw your thumbprint on there. Are you conducting just simple everyday kind of tasks? No, you don't have to attach your thumbprint to that. And again, technology is going to provide us with the opportunity to give us access to our securities account held by the securities intermediaries, either through our phones or call your personal representative, send him or her a text. And the level of interconnectedness is going to be mind blowing anyway. We're going to be so dialed in and so connected, affecting all of these beautiful humanitarian contributions to the planet are going to be simple. It'll be literally like our phones can take a picture of something with a serial number on it, hit submit, and in the background, something just went approved. And the clerk is looking at you like, oh, wow. And you get handed the keys or a bag of groceries or whatever it is. So yeah.
And again, there's a few question marks that we have in the process of this. And that's what's beautiful about doing this whole process live. We can just let you guys know how it unfolded. And I'm sure, like Darren said, there's got to be a process for this. And we're going to be front row seats to finding out what that is.
For sure.
Okay, so the next question. I was born in Ontario, but I have lived in BC since infancy. All of my personal financial history, loans, mortgages, all that, have been in BC. Therefore, would it not be prudent to land the paperwork in BC, since that is my primary residence and where any discharges would take place?
We're still on the fence with this one. Both processes, I believe, are going to be effectual. The one may take a little longer, however, if you were to perfect your stuff in British Columbia. All British Columbia is going to do is go check all the records in Ontario that were there existing when you were born. And if all that stuff lines up and it all matches, then they'll just say, yeah, okay, you now have the ability to, let's say, negotiate on behalf of the beneficiary, coming to now enjoy the fruits of the settlor's labor. So do you have to do it from your birth province? I'm suggesting if you do it through your birth province, that's 100%, and it's probably going to be the fastest way to do it. We do have a couple of loved ones going through the pipe right now in your situation where instead of Ontario, it was Quebec, where a friend of ours living in British Columbia sent their Quebec credentials to British Columbia just to see what happens and how they deal with it. And I mean, so far so good. And again, a lot of this process is just, it's online, it's digital, it's literally that fast. Tick, 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 send, done. And they can stitch together the entire portfolio for you in the background and provide you with the instant remedy you need, whether you send it to your birth province or not.
And that's what's great too about having so many people go through this process. Once we have it streamlined, is we're going to be able to try different techniques through this to see if we can, streamline this a little bit for you guys.
But okay, so now you, in terms of affecting discharges of mortgages and monetary values and things and contracts in British Columbia, yeah, once you perfect your stuff from the birth province, it all gets carried over to where you are now. And now that you have a little, a pot full of stuff to work with, now you can start perfecting and discharging all that stuff in British Columbia. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The system actually becomes more favorable and more user-friendly than the opposite. We're actually coming from a land, a time, a place of nothing but frustration, headache.
And that was one question actually we had to personally message back to people, was just, they find it hard to believe that people are in our favor in the higher ups. Like the judges want us to know this information. So can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah.
So that they don't think it's so hard.
Again, yeah, like the judges are in a very select bandwidth. They operate in a very special frequency. They're administrating the mercy and grace of a court of consciousness, which means actually right from God. So when you come forth with clean hands, you're proving to him that you are worthy. And if you're trustworthy, he can now write a court order saying, yeah, Jody's worthy. She's allowed to proceed. Now, whether proceed means to proceed with a court proceeding or proceed with getting a court order or proceed with, here's your donation to a beautiful cause over here to build us something. The process just starts to unwind. The process becomes, like I was just mentioning, very user-friendly. And the system starts to work for you, and all the players in the system now start to work for you. And your burdens have been, they've been subrogated again, which is that golden word. And subrogated means, you're switching places. Like literally, if Jody and I got up and switched seats, she's the debtor, and if I were the creditor, that instantly switched, because the capacity of the seat doesn't change. It's just who's in the seat. That's the only thing that can change. So whoever's occupying the seat either has possession or control. One of the two. And that's where we've been hoodwinked all these years. But yeah, so to go into that answer a little bit more, no, we're making incredible progress with technology, and they will put the remedy right into our hands, where you call your personal representative if they're not even right beside you already, because chances are they're going to be not far. And the technology allows us and gives us the opportunity to affect some immediate change very quickly.
Okay, excellent. Now, do you know if all the registries are attached across the country? And if not, would it not be required to repeat the process in all the locations that we intend to do business or travel by car?
Once you perfect the interest once, that falls under the doctrine of notice to agent is notice to principal. Once you land your interests in one jurisdiction throughout the Commonwealth, it affects the entire Commonwealth, all of it, because it all operates under the same jurisdiction. Does your perfected interest in Canada work in Russia? Absolutely. Does it work in China? Absolutely. It's the same process, globally. All the governments operate technically on the same monetary system, which is the same legal system. I know there's the odd little twist here and there that kind of throws a bit of a wrench into the system, but for the most part, you're not going to run into a situation where you're hassled ever again, or you can't prove who you are, or this, that, and the other, because your updated status in the background connected to that birth certificate affects everything you've ever touched through the life that you've experienced. Plus, it has an effect on everything you're about to do. So it's very comprehensive. It is so deep in scope. We could spend a weekend going on to, and describing what's really going on in the background. But again, just consider it to be your whole life, and everything you came to know and think is changing. And again, with the awareness, especially with the what do you want to call it? The thing buzzing around out there in the vid. Yeah.
That's what we call it.
So, that has actually brought us into a situation where it's provided us with an opportunity to explore all these incredible avenues and come into this incredible gift of wisdom. And again, sharing it with others. That's critical. So that's why they're trying to clamp down on us with the censorship and all if you have any rhyme or reason or anything intelligible to say, they want to stifle that. And again, we've known about their plan for a long time, but the fact that it's finally coming into fruition, some of these conspiracy theorists, they're starting to look like, well, maybe these guys aren't crazy after all. So here we are.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now, some of his old timers collect a pension and Social Security. Does this still continue? From Michael.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say no. I think those are all going to basically get scrubbed. They're going to get pushed aside for something bigger and much more fantastic. As soon as you land your interest and your securities is in your securities account, you don't need Social Security. You're a bank. You'd be the one providing Social Security for others. You're entitled. Your entire entitlement switches. So again, from not being a debtor, only the debtor position needs help and assistance. Once you're no longer a debtor, you get bounced up to here, and you're the one that's sitting literally on the throne. Now, is your throne made out of 2x4s, or is it made out of mother of pearl? Well, that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Why? Because you don't own it anyway. Let Her Majesty own the assets. You just want use of the assets. So that's the big game changer. People are always like, oh, you want fancy cars and fancy houses. It's like, well, that's just part of the milk and honey that we have access to that. What would I do with a 30,000 square foot house that's worth $20 million? I'd probably put 45 people into it. The fridges are full. The garages are full of vehicles. There's so much abundance here, and everyone is coming together to try to learn and comprehend and appreciate what we're doing. That's why I can justify having the use of a $30 million house that the Crown owns anyway. It's listed as an asset on her books, which actually makes the wealth of the country even better. And we're actually settling titles. We're offsetting debt. It's in the public interest. That's why this process is compelled to be pushed through. And no man or woman out there can come up with a legitimate rebuttal to knock us off this course. It's literally impossible.
Okay, so just because it's in the Crown's name, it's not like they can all of a sudden go and rip the rug out from underneath you?
No, because when we show up as the beneficiaries under a trust, again, the trust is we put you into that beautiful position, which means you can't come and now pull the carpet out from under me later. That's getting the knife in the back. That's the total Judas move. Equity now says, no. If you came forward and you presented a gift or something of incredible value, and you gave it to somebody with no real expectations in return, except for, hey, I just want to be able to use stuff now and then. That's far less valuable than me providing the government with a securities interest that they can literally flip and monetize and make billions, if not trillions off of this thing. And I just want to show up and use the odd car. I can only use one car at a time. Well, hang on. Oh yeah, I might experiment with that one a little bit. But yeah, you know what? Again, you're providing such wealth and accommodation to a third party. The least they can do for you under a trust arrangement is provide you with some type of assurance, which is oddly enough, the name of the consolidated revenue fund at the provincial level is actually called the assurance fund. So when I need to go use a house or a car or a boat or a helicopter, the government takes care of it because they own it. They do all the maintenance. They do all that stuff. We just show up and use it. And when we're done using it, we give them notice saying, hey, Crown, or hey, trustees, I'm no longer interested in using this particular piece of property. I would like to now go use this one.
Okay, perfect. We had another question here on how can we do this process for our children, especially one who is about to become 18 years of age. And if you can also touch on what to do with people are expecting a baby or have just had one.
Okay, 18 years of age. That is well within the reason of being of the age of majority. The age of majority doesn't necessarily mean like a particular number, as in I'm 21 years old, so now I'm of the age of majority. The age of majority is more implying that you're of wisdom and understanding and have comprehension and you know how this stuff works. You could literally come to the age of majority at 16. If you perfect the interest in your birth certificate and go forward and do all the stuff that we're talking about. So mom and dad, prior to son or daughter's 18th birthday, they could perfect it for the child if they wanted to, or instruct the child to go do this for themselves because they're already of the age to enter into a contract. Why? Because the social insurance number application certainly agreed that you were able to enter into a contract. So you definitely have the wherewithal now to come forward and basically correct the record that caused the social insurance number screw up. So yeah, just a little bit of education with the son or daughter there. Let them perfect their own interests. Again, I'm super excited by empowering the youth at this point. When I hear 20-year-olds that are kind of doing this stuff and 18-year-olds doing this stuff, again, I'm almost 50 years old. So I kind of look at that and I go, well, what could these people do in the 30-year difference that I wasn't able to do? Put that potential into their hands. 30 more years of being able to do stuff, that's off the hook. How does mom and dad come forward now and perfect the interest in the baby? Regardless of how old the baby is, if you didn't do it within the specific 14 days right after birth, there's also another window here where you can do it. And that's essentially the process that we're doing right now. Take the certificate, take that interest, attach all these things, make a nice little certificated pie, put some ice cream on top, and then send it to another party who's like, ooh, I love dessert. And we're like, well, we did, but it was a lot of calories. And yeah, I gotta hold off on the cake for a while. But now that party, that secured party, is now holding something of intrinsic value. They can actually go do stuff with this on into the financial systems. And that's why they are now compelled, and a judge will agree, that if you did something beautiful for them, they owe you something. And that something is just called specific performance. Specific performance means, yes, they accept the terms and conditions of the security agreement or the trust expression, and that they also agree to fulfill their duties and obligations now owed to the beneficiary. That's how this whole game was structured from the get-go. And once you perfect it, you're entitled now to enjoy all these benefits. I don't like that word, but you know what I mean.
So if you are expecting a baby, we did have a pre-recording that was done where we talked about this briefly. Darren actually has done that little blurb up. So we'll be putting that up for people who want to perfect their baby's interests before they're 14 days old, or who perhaps are pregnant and that's just down around the corner.
Yeah, as far as I can see, as soon as mom and dad become pregnant, they can probably even apply to a court because they have they have these crazy legislations where they're actually protecting the interests of unborn persons. So if you're unborn, that's either meaning, hey, you actually haven't literally been born yet, or you've been born, you've been tricked into serving sin and Caesar your whole life, and now you choose to be reborn. So there's a whole little opening here for you to come in and be literally resurrected. So
resurrected before you're born?
Yeah, well, resurrected after you're born and died. Now here come for like round number 2. Yeah. So again, the interests of unborn persons, pretty cool. So mom and dad can literally perfect the interest in the child before the child's technically physically born, which is kind of cool.
Will I still be using some form of ID for commerce? And if not, what will I be using?
ID for commerce. Yeah. Once the certificate is perfected in the background, let's say you did not send in your driver's license, medical card, passport. If you did not send all that back to the issuers, once the birth certificate is registered. And again, it's not technically registered, it's just filed. But once it's lodged at land titles, that flips the switch, and all those downstream uses, the driver's license, the medical card, all those secondary identifications automatically are brought up to speed, and you could still go and use those like you would every other day. But the difference now is that something in the background has substantially changed, and the substantial change is you're no longer the debtor.
Okay. This one I'm not quite understanding. Hopefully you do. But what if you don't own a property? Can you still get that standing?
If you don't own the property, yeah, because here's the better way to look at that. We never owned the property in the first place. So when we come forward claiming to own the property, that's the specific move that throws a wrench into the system that says, well, because you have all the power, if you choose to be liable, the system can only say, okay, Ken, you take control, you pay, you be liable. Versus, and again, that's through possession. Legally, you have control. We think we do, but we don't. Whereas that's all the illusion part. So when we come forward to think we own property, no, we don't. We're actually taking that interest and we're saying, no, you own it, but I just want to enjoy it. And the have and to hold, that's that specific union, call it a marriage, that mortgage, that contract, that agreement has standing in a court, and a judge will agree. You have to have the two components to create this union. One gets this and one gets that. The system, can you imagine, how does a piece of paper jump into a Ferrari and drive it? It can't. The system really wants the paper. The system doesn't want the Ferrari. No, the Ferrari was designed and meant for us. My security agreement can't get behind the wheel of a vehicle and go for a drive. No, only we can. So yeah, how does it apply to all the other things coming down the pipe? Yeah, once that birth certificate is perfected, everything else is also perfected because it's all attached. It's all connected to itself.
Okay, so then what happens to those investments that people did have in
all those investments, they're going to get rolled into your securities account. Any money that you put in, any taxes you have ever paid out, and all that stuff is now going to be subject to an accounting. And an accounting means they're going to do like a forensic audit. They're actually going to go and look at your entire life's worth of commercial activity or inactivity, whatever you've done. And they're going to corral, or they're going to segregate, they're going to marshal, they're going to sequester, they're going to separate all of your life commercially out of the big pot. And they're going to assess a value, and they're going to put all kinds of crazy accounting things on this, and they're going to present it to you and say, here, this is what we evaluate your estate to be worth. And you're going to think, well, that's fantastic. Where do we start? And now that you've had this agreement, this is where all these other little mechanisms are going to come online, where the Minister of Finance or his agent or the Minister of Justice or someone is going to be contacting you and saying, hey, this is how we need you to proceed from here. And that would entail this, whatever their conditions and terms are. And again, it's not going to be incredibly binding. It's not going to be incredibly evasive or oppressive. No, it's actually the exact opposite. We're leaving that world for something much cleaner, much better.
Okay, so what exactly is a security entitlement, if you had to summarize that, please?
A security entitlement is phase 2 after you're a protected purchaser. So you are a protected purchaser the moment you add your signature to that birth certificate and the silver coin. That's evidence of you being a protected purchaser. Now what? Now you send it to land titles for the securities intermediaries, who now take it and they hold it. Once they hold it and they spit something out in your direction that says, hey, the applicant here is this number, this control number, this base number for these reasons. And that is what creates the opportunity for you to now be titled the security entitlement holder, which means you're actually not holding the security, they are. But what you're able to do now is direct it, just like Hollywood. Hey, the movie stars are pretty important, but you know what? Without the director, the movie stars ain't doing much other than sitting around in the parking lot. And how famous would all these guys be sitting around in the parking lot? Let's say, probably not as famous. I don't know, because they're not doing much. So the director now shows up. The director is the one that has control. And I worked in the film industry. I know how this works, and it's rather fantastic. It's pretty impressive how efficient it is, how all the players involved take their jobs very seriously. Like, there's not a lot of joking around. It's all there's a lot of not pride is not the right word, but they're very passionate. And when they're passionate, they're very in tune. You can't fool these people. They're the best of the best at what they do. So you have a layer of people now coming forward wanting to help you because you are directing them.
Okay, now in terms of the perfection process of the birth certificate, affidavit, etc., there seems to be some confusion as different legislation is in place in different countries. Now, this seems to be a major stumbling block for many people, is citing the wrong act or section. Now, are we approaching this from equity perspective? Why do we need to quote from such lowly legal references?
Here's why. That legal world only responds to legal inputs. So we actually, over the course of a number of years, we went from using all legal to try to get the remedy we wanted. Didn't work. Then we switched to exclusive equity, trying to get the remedy we wanted, which also didn't work, which was a bit of equity dominates, but yet, well, how come it's not working now? Well, because we were trying to bring equitable claims and equitable pleadings into a public venue, and the two don't mix. They're like oil and water. It's like the publicans, the zombies, the Walking Dead fictions, they're actually not allowed into the kingdom or judges' chambers. Why? Because they're filthy. They make a mess. They get scared and like poop all over the floor. They just do gross things. Yeah, they're dirty. So that's why they're actually not allowed in. So the only way to get into chambers, again, is by having the clean hands. You got to prove you're not a zombie.
And alive.
And alive. Yeah. So to prove you're alive, only a man or woman could literally attach a silver coin to that certificate, put their squiggle on it, put the specific legislation. So now to answer that question, does the specific legislation, does it make or break the deal? As long as it's talking about assignments of a security interest, as long as it's talking about the surety discharging an obligation, as long as it's talking about transferring the security interest to the secured party. And there's tons of legislation out there. I've seen it like just about everywhere. It's just a matter of knowing what to specifically look for, because I know they do hide it very well. And as a matter of fact, although much of this legislation came out of UK and London and England and all that stuff, some of their wordings and some of their structure is like, it's some of the worst out there, some of the most unuser friendly. And whether they just are why they don't want to update it, make it more friendly, I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because as long as it's done within the Commonwealth somewhere, all that legislation came from England initially. Yeah, there's a little bit of French influence, and yeah, there's a lot of Roman influence. Yeah, we know all that kind of stuff. However, fundamentally, no, there's a whack of legislation that you could typically put on that birth certificate. And I'm going to say there's probably 12 at least different things you could put on there. I just happened to choose the ones I did that are specifically for, hey, I'm moving this security interest, this perfected thing, I'm just moving it over to here. And as soon as you can find any legislation that deals with perfected interests, typically from the debtor's jurisdiction, again, because we are in the debtor's jurisdiction, rather than argue with that, let's just deal with it, accept that for what it is, and perfect it and move on. Dean and I spent 10 years arguing that kind of stuff. And you know what? Arguing it to death actually does nothing for us. What does do something for us is, like we're suggesting, perfecting it. A judge can see that. That's your action at law, taking that certificate and putting it into a jurisdiction where the public can't touch it anymore the way they used to. It's a beautiful thing.
It's accountability at another level.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, there was a part 2 to this as well. Now, would quoting the relevant equity maxims not carry more weight or force the intent to be processed and make the whole process universal?
Yeah, the equity maxims are incredibly powerful, but not so much in public court. Again, because why? Caesar's court doesn't give a shit about the equity maxims. They're just like, there's no legal process to deal with that. There's no legal process to deal with that. There's no Canadian law to deal with that. And it's like, yeah, we know, but that's your remedy. The judge actually just handed you your remedy by saying, hey, there's no Canadian law that deals with this. And then your response is, well, then great. Let's go to chambers where I can unload all my equitable doctrines and all my equitable pleadings and all my equitable defenses in chambers. Drop 1 or 2 or 3 over here on the public side just to trick the judge into saying that doesn't fly here. Well, then if it doesn't fly here, Your Honor, we got to move this to another venue. Moving it to another venue is typically going to chambers. No zombies allowed. Now drop all your loving, awesome stuff, and he'll probably get up and pour you a water because he's so impressed with you.
Coming to you alive. That's where we got it from. Okay, so Darren has already kindly quoted relevant maxims in some of his talks. How about putting those directly into the paperwork, including the birth certificate, instead of the acts or the statute references?
I would do both. When we come and we duly execute, we duly seal, we duly sign, we duly deliver, that means you are in the power and you actually have the control to quote one legal statute that puts that interest into their possession under their specific control with a specific amount of power to go do certain things. Okay, well, that's one part of the duly. The other duly is, check out my equitable maxim here that says no statute can, what was that other one? A statute will not be used as a cloak for fraud. So that's a deadly one. Another one is no trust can fail for want of trustee. So as soon as a trust shows up, put that maxim, no trust can fail for want of trustee, right on the birth certificate. Ooh, that one's deadly. Here's another one. Equity imputes an intention to fulfill an obligation. What's the intent? The intent.
No, well, I was just going to say, for the newbies in the group, can you please explain to them what a maxim even is?
A maxim is kind of settled doctrine. It's like so accepted around the world. It's just so kind of cut and dry. It can't be argued. It's like saying gravity or magnetism is here.
Universal laws.
Universal laws. They can't be disputed. They can't be argued. They can't be dismissed. They're just they're settled. I don't want to say law because.
And so it is.
And so it is. So yeah, again, it's just the way it is and the way it always will be. And those things don't change. That's when the foundational principles don't change, that's how you know they're real. When they can arbitrarily change a code or a statute or a legislation while you're in jail trying to fight that particular legislation, that tells you that it's not real. It's not settled. If they can just wing it, how could you ever get ahead of something that they can arbitrarily change right before you're trying to change and address it? See, like it's such a conundrum. You can't get ahead of that. You can't win. Mm-hmm. And that's what Caesar's realm is all about. It's all about confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Spinning. It's all about keeping you not quite aware, but keeping you just awake enough so that you still continue to serve the game. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well said. Just a thought, this is from Adam. When you perfect your birth certificate, once you are beneficiary and the Crown is trustee, how do you stand in terms of being looked after by the state, Crown, or government?
Okay, so now let's call you an asset. You're a friend of the system. You're a friend of Her Majesty. And if you're no longer a threat or an enemy of the state will afford you certain protections. Certain protections like, we will provide you a police escort. When you're walking into Walmart or Costco, and I just saw a video the other day of some gentleman that was in Canadian Tire getting choked out because he wasn't wearing a mask. And I mean, this stuff is rampant. Every day there's evidences of this shit going on all the time. So what are some of the protections? Well, when the court actually authorizes you to go conduct your business out there, but look at all the lunatics out there doing all this.
Threats.
Yeah, myself and my household and members of my household are literally under threat as soon as they go out there. It's like going out there, swimming, but the water's full of sharks and piranhas. I mean, I know piranhas don't like salt water, but you're swimming in a lot of potential risk, potential harm. So they will put you into a position where you don't have to suffer that anymore. And again, the police cars nowadays, they have these incredible little computer systems that read your license plate like 100 yards away. They have these little GPS tracking things in their systems that let them know that, there's a private individual 1 kilometer away, and they can probably even see where you're going and what you're doing. And they're probably even being directed to be like, hey, be close by, be alert, because that's their new duty, is to protect the assets. They're not there to protect the enemies of the state. Are you kidding?
Or dead people.
No, it's like you're in a prison camp. You're literally a prisoner of war. You actually just don't know it because it's so big. So they're not compelled to serve and protect you. You're a deemed enemy of the state, a combatant at war. It's not their duty to protect you. It's actually the exact opposite. They're there to harm you and push you into a position where you're seeking redemption. You're seeking the light. You're seeking something better because you know what? I'm getting tired of fighting.
It's like the submission all the time.
Yeah, they beat you into submission. And when you're submissive, we're not really capable of doing a whole lot. It's only when we find that inner strength, we rise, despite getting whacked on the back, like Yellowbeard special. You are going to be able to rise despite the persecution. And that's what, if you want to call them the watchers, or, the powers that really are, that are watching us, and, they're either clapping, or they're either doing this or this. We watched Gladiator last night. Yeah. So good. So there you go. So yeah, the maxims, super important. Tying them into your everyday life, yes, they are fantastically effective once you're on the private side, though. Using them publicly, it's kind of hit and miss unless you really know how to dial them in and be focused, like laser beam style, and use them for very specific applications. So
absolutely. A lot changes once you perfect your interests. And that's where it's hard not to go back to those kind of what we call 3D questions, because again, we've just been under such a fog, a misrepresentation of what actually is, right? Yeah. So that's even part of our programming, is even just trying to teach people that new deprogramming way of being. So
the unforming.
Absolutely. So we've answered quite a few questions here tonight.
No, more.
No, I don't have any more.
Okay, let's find another one.
I even gave you some extra ones.
Okay. Well,
this is my whole point. He's an endless funnel of beautiful information. We will do more of these, I promise. Again, I will put up posts every single week, and we will do these every single week for you guys. Just put down your questions. If one of the answers leaded to more questions, write them down. You're going to start realizing, Darren circles around. It becomes about the same questions coming up over and over in the same answers. So it'll sink in more and more.
And again, in closing comments here, as soon as you perfect that interest, and as soon as you do the most honorable thing a man or woman could ever do, the system opens up and comes to protect and assist you at virtually every level. You're literally coming out of one costume or one character, and you're now assuming or taking control of a whole other. So you literally go from Clark Kent, you jump into the phone booth, what happens? Well, there you go. We all know. So
that's how I love how you talk about it as like a resurrection, being reborn. It's like this taking off this old skin persona and
it literally, a new person. It literally is. And I mean, we are being bombarded right now with, spiritual attacks and all these kinds of mediums, and the darkness is, they're trying to take their final shots at, some of these light workers and spiritually motivated people that are here to heal, here to help, here to share. And you know what? The darkness can't even touch us anymore, to the point where we're just laughing at it. It is so relieving to be able to breathe non-polluted air and, absorb fresh water, to absorb all of this energy now, because we're actually purging, we're cleansing ourselves, we're pushing all that old stuff out. And, all that 3D stuff, once it's gone, it's literally a spiritual cleanse. It allows for the infusion or the injection. Ooh, I don't like that word. The insertion. Oh, I like that word. That's better. It allows for these new doors opening that are going to be just full of milk and honey and blessings in the background there. We just had to be a little bit diligent, a little bit vigilant, and not lose faith. And we're literally there. I was just saying to the ladies here today that we're literally over the hardest part. The hardest part is done. So now we're literally in cleanup mode. Rubber gloves.
All right. More sweetness to come. More goodness.
We're getting there.
We cracked the code. Like we got through. That's the most exciting part of all this. So we're going to share it with you.
Yeah. So stay empowered. Stay on it. Stay above it. Again, the darkness doesn't have a chance, and they're actually looking pretty weak at this point, and we're doing nothing but getting stronger every day. And it's just the way it is.
And it's beautiful seeing all of you guys come together. It's just wonderful. We do have our website up and running for the most part. We still got some bugs, you guys. This is an absolute monster of a website we took on. It's literally a Facebook platform. So there's lots of programming that has to be done in the background. If you're having trouble registering, please message us individually, just me personally. I'm at Divergence. At gmail.com, and I'll forward it on to our computer people that are working very hard, to Kim and Matt and Joshua now as well. It's just fantastic. We do have some groups that are set up. We have Australia, Israel, Alberta, Ontario, BC, and we're adding them all the time. So please go log on. You're going to get a confirmation email. Verify you're a real person, and then start going into these chats and start uploading your documents, start chatting, start forming relationships, and we'll get to you guys. It's just we can only do so much, and at the same time we have to take care of ourselves so that we can move through this process, so we can teach you guys how to move through it as well.
Laying tracks.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. There'll be more of these, and we will see you soon. Bye now.